The morning sun shone bright over New Busan Colony. Hana walked through the main street, checking on the shops and businesses. She loved being the colony administrator. The people here were good, hard-working folks who had come to this distant planet to build new lives. Taiho stood at the security station watching the morning reports. Nothing unusual today. Just the normal traffic of mining ships coming and going. He was happy with the peaceful life here, far from the wars and troubles of the inner systems. In the engineering section, Minho was fixing a broken water pump. He, had been a soldier once fighting for Earth against pirates and rebels. But that was years ago. Now he just wanted to help people and live quietly. His strong hands worked on the machine while he hummed an old song from home. The sky changed without warning. Red clouds spread across the blue sky like blood in water. The air grew cold and still. Birds stopped singing. Even the wind died away. Hana looked up from her work, feeling afraid but not knowing why. Ships came down from the red sky. But these were not normal ships made of metal and glass. These ships looked alive. They had thick skin instead of metal hulls. Veins ran along their sides, pulsing with dark fluid. The ships breathed like giant animals, making wet sounds as they moved through the air. People came out of their homes to stare. Children pointed at the sky while their parents pulled them close. Everyone felt the same cold fear growing in their hearts. The largest ship landed in the town square. Its skin split open like a mouth, and something stepped out. She was 12 feet tall with 6 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Her skin was deep purple, almost black, and it seemed to shift and move in the light. Her eyes burned like dying stars. When she moved, plants nearby turned brown and died. This was Velithara, the vampire queen of the Sanguine Dominion. She spoke without moving her mouth. Her voice came from inside people's heads, cold and sharp like broken glass. "I have awakened," she said. "I have slept for thousands of years, but now I am hungry. You will feed me." More creatures poured out of the ships. They looked like bats that had learned to walk like men. Their wings were torn and bloody. Their faces were all teeth and hunger. They moved fast, faster than human eyes could follow. The feeding began. Taiho tried to fight. He pulled out his weapon and fired at the creatures. The energy beams passed right through them without harm. One of the bat things grabbed him with its claws. Taiho screamed as he felt his life being pulled out of his body. In seconds, he became a dried husk that crumbled to dust. Hana ran toward the emergency shelter, trying to save the children, but Velithara appeared in front of her like a shadow given form. The vampire queen placed one claw on Hana's forehead. Hana's eyes went blank as her memories, her hopes, her very soul were drained away. She fell to the ground, empty and lifeless. The creatures spread through the colony like a plague. They did not just drink blood. They fed on life itself, on dreams, and hopes and love. They left behind only empty shells that had once been human beings. Minho heard the screaming from deep in the mining tunnels where he was working. He grabbed his tools and ran toward the surface. But when he reached the tunnel entrance, he saw the massacre happening in the town. His training kicked in. The soldier he had been came back to life. He knew he could not fight these things with weapons. He had to be smart. He had to survive. Minho crawled back into the deepest tunnels, the ones that led to the old mining shafts. He could hear the creatures above, hunting for any survivors. He found an old storage room and sealed himself inside. For 3 days, he waited in the dark. He listened to the sounds above grow quiet. The creatures had finished feeding, but they did not leave. Minho could feel them up there waiting, watching. On the 4th day, the sounds stopped completely. Minho crept out of his hiding place and made his way to the surface. The colony was empty, not just of people but of life itself. The grass was brown and dead. The trees had no leaves. Even the insects were gone. Bodies lay everywhere, but they were not really bodies anymore. They were just empty shapes that fell apart when the wind touched them. Minho found what was left of Hana near the school. He found Taiho's remains by the security station. All his friends, all the people he had sworn to protect, were gone. In the town square, Velithera's ship still sat like a giant tumor on the Earth. Other ships were taking off, heading to other worlds to spread their hunger. But the Queen's ship remained. Minho felt something he had not felt since his soldier days. Not just anger, but a deep, burning need to fight back. Everyone else was dead or running. The news reports he could still pick up on his communicator talked about entire fleets retreating, whole planets being evacuated. But Minho did not want to run. He went to the spaceport where a few small ships had been left behind. Most were damaged by the creatures, but he found one cargo hauler that still worked. It was not much, just a simple ship meant for carrying supplies between planets. But it would fly. As he prepared the ship for takeoff, Minho made a promise to the empty air around him. He promised Hana and Taiho and all the others that their deaths would not be meaningless. He would follow these creatures. He would find a way to stop them. The ship lifted off into the red sky. Below him, New Busan grew, smaller until it was just a brown spot on a dying world. Ahead of him, he could see the trail of the vampire ships heading toward the galactic core. Minho set his course to follow them. He did not know what he would do when he caught up. He did not know if he could hurt these creatures or stop their feeding. All he knew was that someone had to try. Behind him, the red clouds began to clear from New Busan's sky, but the damage was done. The world would never live again. The emergency message from New Busan reached Earth in 6 hours. Admiral Jiwon sat in her command center reading the report again and again. She could not believe what she was seeing. Entire colony drained of life, she read out loud. Unknown, alien species, biological ships, no survivors found. But that was not the worst news. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Nexari crystal worlds had gone silent. The gas cities of the Vorthak had sent one final message. The ancient, evil wakes, we flee to the void. Even the machine hybrid Technari, who feared nothing, were shutting down their systems and going dark. Captain Seojin stood beside the admiral's chair. He was young but experienced, a good officer who had fought pirates and rebels without fear. Now his face was pale as he read the incoming messages. Admiral, he said quietly, it's not just humans being attacked. Every species in the galaxy is running from something. The old records call them the Sanguine Dominion. Admiral Jiwon pulled up the ancient files that had been stored in Earth's deepest archives. The records were so old that most people thought they were just stories. They told of creatures that had ruled the galaxy long ago, before any of the current species had reached the stars. The records spoke of beings that fed not just on flesh and blood, but on hope itself. They turned entire civilizations into empty husks, leaving dead worlds behind them. But then suddenly they had vanished. The records did not say why or how. Get me a connection to the Nexari homeworld, Admiral Jiwon ordered. No response, Admiral, came the reply. All Nexari space has gone dark. Same with the Vorthak territories and the Technari zones. On Earth, President Minji called an emergency meeting. General Do-yun, the head of Earth's military forces, stood before a room full of worried leaders. We need to evacuate immediately, he said. Every ship we have should be loaded with people and sent to the Andromeda Galaxy. We can start over there. But Dr. Suman, an expert on ancient alien civilizations, disagreed. She was small and quiet, but her voice was strong when she spoke. Running will not save us, she said. The old records I've studied suggest that these creatures grow stronger when people feel hopeless. Every civilization that runs away feeds their power. Then what do you suggest? President Minji asked. There are legends, Dr. Suman replied. Stories of a weapon that was made to fight these creatures long ago. If we could find it. Fairy tales. General Do-yun interrupted. We need to deal with reality. Our fleets are no match for biological ships that can regenerate damage instantly. Captain Seojin was about to learn just how true those words were. He led a battle fleet of 30 ships to intercept the vampire forces near the Kepler Nebula. These were good ships with experienced crews. They had won battles against pirates and enemy fleets. Seojin was confident they could at least slow down the alien advance. The vampire ships came out of the nebula like living nightmares. They were not built. They were grown. Their hulls pulsed with veins and arteries. When Seojin's ships fired, their weapons, the holes in the vampire ships healed in seconds. But worse than that, the vampire ships did something no normal enemy could do. They reached out with invisible claws and grabbed the life force of Seojin's crew members. Across 30 human ships, people began to scream as they felt their souls being pulled away. "All ships, retreat!" Seojin shouted into his communicator. But it was too late. The vampire queen herself appeared on his ship's main screen. Velithra looked at him with those burning eyes and smiled, showing teeth like broken glass. "Your fear tastes sweet," she said. "But there is something else in this galaxy, something that does not run, something that does not despair. I will find it and taste it too." Seojin's ship exploded in a ball of fire. His final message was broadcast across the human fleet. "Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. All forces, retreat to Earth immediately." Back on his cargo ship, Minho listened to the radio chatter from the battle. He heard Seojin's last words. He heard the panic in the voices of the retreating human fleet. But he did not turn his ship around. Instead, he followed the trail of dead worlds that the vampire ships left behind. On each planet, the same story. Cities full of empty husks. Plants and animals drained of life. Even the soil itself was gray and lifeless. Minho learned to scavenge from the vampire ships. When they finished feeding on a world, they left behind small pieces of their biotechnology. Minho collected these pieces and slowly figured out how to use them. His simple cargo ship began to change, growing armor made of living metal and weapons that fed on energy instead of ammunition. The galaxy around him was falling apart. Entire star systems were being evacuated. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years went silent. Ancient civilizations that had survived wars and disasters were packing up and fleeing to other galaxies. But Minho kept following the trail. He did not know that Velithara was watching him. The vampire queen could sense every living being in the galaxy could taste their fear and despair. But this one human was different. Instead of growing more afraid, he was becoming more determined. "Interesting," she whispered to herself as she fed on another world. "This one does not lose hope. I have not tasted such defiance in 1,000 years." She began to change her course slightly, leaving clues for him to follow. Not because she was afraid of one human with a small ship, but because she was curious. What would happen when an unstoppable force met someone who refused to be stopped? On Earth, the evacuation ships were loading millions of people. General Do-hyun's plan was working. Humanity would survive by running away to safety. But Dr. Suman stood alone in her laboratory, studying the ancient texts. She had found references to something called the Void Reaper, a weapon created by species that no longer existed. The weapon could destroy the vampire threat forever, but at a terrible cost. She tried to send a message to the fleeing human fleets to tell them about the weapon, but her message was lost in the chaos of evacuation. No one was listening to stories of ancient weapons when the present danger was so real and immediate. Somewhere in deep space, Minho's cargo ship continued its lonely hunt. He did not know about Dr. Suman's research or the Void Reaper. He only knew that someone had to fight. Back the galaxy was burning and everyone was running away. Everyone except one human who had seen too much death to ever give up hope. Minho's ship had been following the vampire trail for 6 weeks. He had given it a new name, Soul's Pride. The original cargo hauler was gone now, replaced by something that was part machine and part living creature. The biotechnology he had, scavenged from vampire ships, had grown into his ship's hull, making it stronger and faster. But he was not the only one hunting. He was also being hunted. Small vampire scouts had been following him for days. They stayed just out of range, watching his every move. Sometimes he would find them feeding on space debris or small asteroids as if they were testing his reactions. Minho knew this was not normal hunting behavior. These creatures were intelligent, and they were playing with him. Someone wanted to see what he would do. The trail led him to a dead system called Xerion. 5 planets orbited a dying red star, and every world was covered in ancient ruins. The vampire ships had been here recently. He could see the biometal residue they left behind. But they had not stayed long. On the third planet, Xerion Prime, Minho found something different. The ruins here were older than anything he had ever seen. The buildings were made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols were carved into every surface. His ship's biosensors detected something alive in the deepest ruins. Not vampire life, but something else. Something that had been waiting. Minho took his portable equipment and went down to the planet's surface. The air was thin but breathable. His boots crunched on soil that had not felt rain for millions of years. The black ruins stretched as far as he could see. In the center of the dead city, he found a building that was different from the others. This one still had power. Lights flickered in windows that were shaped like stars. As he approached, a voice spoke to him. "Welcome, human," the voice said. It spoke perfect human language, but there was something artificial about it. "I have been waiting for someone like you." "Who are you?" Minho asked. "I am Kira," the voice replied. "I am what remains of the Xerion people. They created me to remember their history and guard their secrets." A holographic figure appeared in front of him. It looked almost human, but with silver skin and eyes that held too much sadness. "The Sanguine Dominion came to our worlds long ago," Kira continued. "They fed on us until only empty shells remained. But before we died, we learned something important. We learned how they could be destroyed." Minho felt his heart beat faster. "How?" "There is a weapon," Kira said. "The Void Reaper. It was built by an alliance of species that no longer exist. They sacrificed themselves to create it, knowing that someone would need it someday." The hologram gestured, and images appeared in the air around them. Minho saw battles between vampire ships and fleets he did not recognize. He saw entire star systems being destroyed to forge a single weapon. "The weapon can unmake the Vampire Queen completely," Kira explained. "Not just kill her, but erase her from existence itself. Without her, the Sanguine Dominion will crumble." "Where is this weapon?" Minho asked. "At the galactic core on a station called Thanatos Gate. It orbits the great black hole called Charybdis." Minho studied the star charts that Kira showed him. The galactic core was months away, even with his improved ship, and the space around black holes was dangerous for any ship. "But there is a cost," Kira said quietly. "The weapon requires not just the life of whoever uses it. It requires their complete essence. They will be erased from existence so completely that no one will remember they ever lived." Minho was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Is there any other way?" "No," Kira replied. "This is why your species is alone in fighting. Every other race knows about the weapon's cost. They choose to flee rather than sacrifice themselves. But humans are different." "Yes," Kira said. "We have studied your species through the radio signals you broadcast into space. Humans are the only species that evolved on what you call a death world. Your planet tried to kill you with diseases, disasters, and predators. But instead of becoming afraid, you became stubborn. You learned to hope when hope was foolish." As they talked, Minho's ship detected incoming signals. 3 small human ships were approaching Xerion Prime. Against all orders, some of his people had come looking for him. The ships landed near the ruins. Commander Youngsu stepped out, followed by Sergeant Hyejin, Engineer Jiho, and Medic Bora. They were all young, all volunteers who had stolen ships to chase after him. "We've been tracking your signal," Youngsu said when they met. "Command thinks you're dead, but we knew better." "You shouldn't have come," Minho replied. "This is too dangerous." "Dangerous for one person, maybe," Hyejin said with a grin. "But we're a team now." Jiho was already studying Minho's modified ship with professional interest. "This biotechnology is incredible," he said. "With our ships, we could probably integrate similar systems." But their reunion was interrupted by alarms from all 4 ships. Vampire scouts had found them. Dozens of the bat-like creatures were descending from orbit, moving faster than any normal ship could fly. The battle was brief and brutal. The vampires were not trying to feed this time. They were trying to capture. Several of them focused on Minho, while others attacked his companions. Minho fought with weapons powered by vampire biotechnology. His shots could actually hurt the creatures, sending them screaming back into space. But there were too many of them. "Get to the ships," he shouted. They ran through the ancient ruins while vampire scouts dove at them from above. Jiho was grabbed by claws that tried to drain his life force, but Bora shot the creature with a modified energy weapon. Youngsu covered their retreat while Heejin helped the wounded engineer to safety. All 4 ships lifted off together, flying in formation toward deep space. Behind them, the vampire scouts gathered into a swarm and began to follow. But they did not attack again. Instead, they maintained a steady distance as if they were herding the humans toward something. "They're driving us toward the galactic core," Youngsu observed. "Good," Minho replied. "That's where we need to go anyway." On her flagship deep in space, Velathara watched the chase through the eyes of her scouts. The human was more interesting than she had expected. He had found the old AI and learned about the weapon. Most creatures would have despaired at learning the cost of victory, but this one was more determined than ever. "You fascinate me, little human," she whispered. "I will enjoy tasting your hope when we finally meet." She gave new orders to her swarm. Let the humans reach Thanatos Gate. Let them think they had a chance. The weapon was real, and it could destroy her. But she had spent centuries preparing defenses around the ancient station. When the human arrived, she would be waiting for him. And then she would discover what hope tasted like when it was finally broken. The 4 human ships flew toward the galactic core, chased by vampire scouts and racing against time. Behind them lay a galaxy in flames. Ahead of them waited the most dangerous place in known space, guarded by an enemy that had ruled the stars when their species was still learning to use fire. But Minho was not afraid. For the first time since New Busan, he was not alone. And that made all the difference. The journey to the galactic core took 2 months. Minho's small fleet of 4 ships traveled through space that grew stranger with each passing day. The stars here were older and redder. Some were dying, collapsed into white dwarfs or neutron stars. Others had been drained completely, leaving only cold husks floating in the dark. Thanatos Gate hung in impossible space, orbiting so close to the black hole Charybdis that it should have been torn apart. But the ancient station was built from materials that did not exist in normal space. Its hull shifted between solid metal and pure energy, bending the laws of physics to stay intact. "How are we supposed to dock with that?" Jiho asked, staring at the readings from his modified ship. "Very carefully," Minho replied. As they approached the station, vampire ships began to appear from the shadows around the black hole. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They formed a living wall between the humans and their destination, but the vampire ships did not attack. Instead, they simply watched and waited. "It's a trap," Youngsu said over the communications channel. "Of course it is," Minho replied, "but we're going anyway." The station's docking bay opened like a mouth, revealing an interior that pulsed with organic light. As the 4 ships entered, Minho could feel something vast and intelligent studying them. The vampire queen was here, waiting. They docked in a bay that was part machine and part living tissue. The walls breathed slowly and veins of dark fluid ran along the ceiling, but there was air and gravity, maintained by technology that was millions of years old. Minho and his team gathered their equipment and stepped onto the station. Their bio-enhanced weapons hummed with energy, ready for battle. But the corridors they walked through were empty and silent. "Where's everyone?" Bora whispered. "Waiting for us to reach the center," Minho said. "This is her game. She wants us to come to her." They followed the station's main corridor deeper into its heart. The walls showed images of the weapon's creation, species that no longer existed sacrificing themselves to forge something that could destroy ultimate evil. The Void Reaper had cost entire civilizations their lives, but they had paid willingly. At Iya, the center of the station, they found a chamber that existed partially outside normal space. The room was bigger inside than outside, and the walls seemed to stretch into infinity. In the center stood a pillar of pure darkness, and embedded in that pillar was the weapon. The Void Reaper looked almost simple, just a blade of black metal that seemed to absorb light. But Minho could feel the power contained within it. This was not just a weapon. It was the concentrated will of countless beings who had chosen death over surrender. "Welcome," said a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. Velithara materialized, in the chamber like a shadow given form. She was even more terrifying in person than Minho had imagined, 12 feet tall with 6 arms ending in razor claws. Her eyes burned like dying stars, and her presence made the air itself feel cold and thin. "You have come so far?" she continued, her voice echoing inside their minds. "Across the galaxy, through dangers that would have stopped any other species, all to reach a weapon that will erase you from existence." She walked around them in a slow circle, studying each member of the team like a predator choosing which prey to take first. "Do you know what I am?" she asked. "I am not just a vampire. I am the concept of despair given form. I feed on hope itself, on the dreams and aspirations that keep mortals alive. Every species that has fled from me has made me stronger." Youngsu raised his weapon, but Velithara moved faster than human eyes could follow. Her claws passed through his chest without touching his body, but he screamed anyway as she began to drain his life force. "But you humans are different," she said, ignoring Youngsu's struggles. "You come from a world that tried to kill you every day, where hope was often all that stood between survival and extinction. This has made you resistant to my influence." She released Youngsu, who collapsed but was still breathing. Then she turned her attention back to Minho. "Especially you," she said. "I can taste the strength of your hope. It is pure and bright and absolutely certain. I have not encountered anything like it in 1,000 years." "Then you know why I'm here," Minho said, stepping toward the weapon. "Yes," Velithara replied. "You believe you can save the galaxy by sacrificing yourself. How beautifully human. How wonderfully naive." She gestured, and the chamber filled with vampire spawn. Hundreds of the bat-like creatures poured in from hidden passages surrounding the small human team. The battle began. Yejin opened fire with her modified energy weapons, cutting down vampire spawn with each shot. Jiho activated defensive shields, powered by biotechnology he had installed in his equipment. Bora tended to the wounded Youngsu while firing at any creature that came too close. But there were too many enemies, and more kept coming. The vampire spawn swarmed over the humans like living nightmares, their claws draining life force with every touch. "Go!" Hyejin shouted to Minho as she fought off 3 creatures at once. "Get to the weapon!" Jiho activated an overload in his bio-enhanced systems, creating an explosion that cleared a path through the vampire spawn. The effort killed him instantly, but his sacrifice gave Minho the opening he needed. Bora fell next, overwhelmed while trying to protect Youngsu. Her final act was to throw her medical kit to Minho, knowing he might need it to stay alive long enough to reach the weapon. Youngsu struggled to his feet, wounded but not defeated. He grabbed an energy rifle and began firing at Velithara herself, trying to distract her from Minho's approach to the weapon. "Your friends die for nothing," the vampire queen said, casually deflecting Youngsu's shots. "Even if you reach the weapon, I have prepared defenses. The Void Reaper cannot be used while I live and I am immortal." But Minho had learned something during his months of studying vampire biotechnology. The creatures were not truly immortal. They were sustained by the life force they drained from others. Cut them off from that source, and they became vulnerable. He pulled out a device Jiho had built, a biodisruptor that could interfere with vampire feeding abilities. It was only a prototype, untested and dangerous to use, but it might give him the few seconds he needed. Minho activated the device. Immediately, all the vampire spawn in the chamber began to weaken and fall. Even Velithara staggered as her connection to her feeding network was disrupted. "Impossible," she hissed. Minho ran to the weapon pillar. The Void Reaper seemed to call to him, its dark metal reflecting his own determination back at him. As his hands closed around the hilt, he felt the weapon's power flowing into him, but he also felt its price. The weapon showed him everything he would lose: his life, his memories, his very existence. No one would remember his name or his sacrifice. He would be erased so completely that even the records of his birth would disappear. Behind him, Young-Soo made one final stand against the recovering vampire spawn. He was badly wounded and outnumbered, but he kept fighting to give Minho more time. Minho gripped the weapon tighter. He thought of Hana and Taiho, of all the people who had died on New Busan. He thought of the civilizations fleeing in terror across the galaxy. He thought of Hyejin and Jiho and Bora, who had given their lives so he could reach this moment. Choose, the weapon whispered in his mind. Choose between existence and victory. Minho made his choice. The moment Minho grasped the Void Reaper completely, reality began to tear apart around him. The weapon did not just bond with his life force, it transformed him into something beyond physical existence. He became a force of pure destruction aimed at the very concept of the Sanguine Dominion. Velithara screamed as she felt the change begin. The sound was not just noise, it was the cry of something that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years suddenly facing its own destruction. "You fool!" she shrieked. "You do not understand what you are unleashing. The weapon will destroy more than just me." But Minho could no longer hear her words. The Void Reaper had taken control of his consciousness, showing him the true scope of what needed to be done. The vampire curse was not just about Velithara and her spawn. It was a corruption that had spread across space and time itself, infecting countless worlds with despair. To cleanse that corruption completely, every trace of vampire influence had to be erased, including Minho himself, who had been touched by their biotechnology. The station began to shake as space-time warped around the weapon's activation. Cracks appeared in the walls, revealing the swirling chaos of the black hole outside, but the ancient structure held together, designed to contain forces that could tear apart reality. Velithara unleashed her full power, no longer playing games or testing her enemy. She grew larger, her 6 arms multiplying into dozens. Her burning eyes became twin suns of malevolent energy. The Vampire Queen revealed herself as she truly was, not just a creature, but a living embodiment of the universe's capacity for evil. She struck at Minho with claws that could cut through dimensions, but the Void Reaper protected him, wrapping him in armor made of crystallized hope, the collected dreams of every species that had ever refused to surrender. The battle was no longer physical. It took place on a level where thoughts became weapons and emotions could kill. Velithara tried to drain Minho's determination, to fill his mind with images of failure and meaningless death. She showed him futures, where his sacrifice accomplished nothing, where other evils would rise to take her place. But the weapon had chosen well. Minho's hope was not based on naive optimism or blind faith. It was the tested hope of someone who had seen the worst the universe could offer and still chosen to fight. It was hope tempered by loss and strengthened by the memory of people worth saving. "I am eternal," Velithara roared as cracks began to appear in her form. "I have fed on the despair of 1 billion worlds. I cannot be destroyed by one mortal." "You're right," Minho said, his voice now echoing with the power of the weapon. "You can't be destroyed by one mortal, but you can be destroyed by everyone you ever killed. Every life you drained, every hope you crushed. They're all here with me now." The Void Reaper blazed with light that was darker than darkness itself. This was not the absence of light, but its opposite. Illumination so pure that it revealed the empty spaces between atoms, the hollow places where hope had been stolen away. Outside the station, Lieutenant Taejian arrived with an emergency rescue fleet from Earth. He had been sent to recover any survivors from Minho's mission, though Command believed everyone was already dead. Through his ship's sensors, he watched the impossible battle taking place near the black hole. "Sir," his communications officer said, "I'm detecting massive energy discharges from the station. Something is happening in there." On the station, Minho began to fade as the weapon consumed his essence, but he was not disappearing into nothing. He was becoming something larger. His individual existence was being transformed into pure destructive force that could reach across the galaxy instantaneously. Velithara made one final, desperate attack. She poured every bit of power she had stolen over millennia into a spear of concentrated despair, aimed at Minho's heart. If she could break his hope at the critical moment, the weapon would fail and she would survive. The spear struck home. For an instant, Minho felt every loss he had ever suffered. His friends on New Busan, his fallen comrades, the civilizations that had already been destroyed. The weight of all that death pressed down on him like a mountain, but then he remembered something else. He remembered Hyejin's grin as she volunteered for an impossible mission. He remembered Jiho's excitement about vampire biotechnology. He remembered Bora's gentle hands tending wounded. He remembered Youngsu still fighting even when victory seemed hopeless. He remembered that people had chosen to stand with him, even knowing they would die. That was worth everything. The void. Reaper exploded outward in a wave of cleansing energy that moved faster than light itself. It spread across the galaxy in seconds, seeking out every trace of vampire corruption. Wherever it touched, the spawn crumbled to dust. Their bioships dissolved into harmless space debris. The very concept of the sanguine dominion was being erased from existence. Velithara's scream lasted only a moment before she too was unmade. Not killed, but removed from reality so completely that she had never existed. The galaxy forgot her name, forgot her terror, forgot everything except a vague sense that some great darkness had finally ended. On Thanatos Gate, Youngsu struggled to his feet as the vampire spawn around him turned to dust. The chamber was empty now except for him and the slowly fading pillar where the weapon had been stored. "Minho?" he called out. There was no answer. There was no sign that anyone else had ever been there. Lieutenant Taejin's rescue fleet docked with the station and found Youngsu alone and wounded. The young commander kept insisting that there had been others with him, a team leader named Minho who had activated some kind of ancient weapon. But there were no records of anyone by that name in the mission files. The rescue team assumed that Youngsu was suffering from hallucinations caused by his injuries. They evacuated him back to Earth for medical treatment. Months passed. The vampire threat simply ended. One day the galaxy was in chaos with entire civilizations fleeing in terror. The next day the danger was gone. The bioships were found drifting empty in space. No one could remember exactly what they had been running from. Admiral Jiwan led the returning fleets back to reclaim their abandoned worlds. President Minji established new alliances with the other species, all of them united by the shared experience of surviving some forgotten catastrophe. But no one remembered the human who had made their survival possible. Only one being in the galaxy retained any memory of the truth. Kira, the ancient AI on Zirion Prime, had been designed to preserve records even when reality itself was altered. In her deep memory banks, she kept the story of Minho's sacrifice. Sometimes, late at night in the deepest parts of space, Kira would transmit a message to no one in particular. It was a simple memorial for a hero whose name had been erased from existence. Here lies one who chose hope over fear, sacrifice over survival. Though forgotten by all, his light still burns in the freedom of every world. Dr. Suman, now elderly, established a memorial on the rebuilt New Busan colony. It honored the unknown heroes who had died defending the settlement from some long-forgotten alien attack. She never knew that she was actually honoring the man who had saved the entire galaxy. Years later, Captain Gina, Dr. Suman's daughter, led new exploration missions into uncharted space. Humanity had become known throughout the galaxy as the species that stood firm against the darkness, though no one could remember exactly why. And in the deep space between the stars, where light was rare and hope was precious, travelers sometimes reported seeing a brief flash of impossibly pure illumination. They called it the ghost light, a phenomenon that appeared when things seemed darkest, reminding them that even in the void, someone had once chosen to burn away the night. Minho was gone, erased so completely that even his birth records had vanished. But his choice lived on in every world that was free, every species that no longer had to run, every moment when someone chose courage over fear. The galaxy was safe and would never know the price of its salvation.